With that, I first want to just thank Sarah for moderating this today. Sarah Warner is an absolute superstar, and I've known it since the minute I've met her, as I know Nazik is the one who said, oh my goodness, Sarah is so wonderful. So we are so thrilled to have Sarah be our moderator today. She's a passionate advocate for voting rights and the rights of survivors of human trafficking, domestic violence, and sexual assault. She's played many different roles, including End Slavery Cincinnati, the League, the State Public Affairs Committee for the Junior Leagues of Ohio, and has done a lot of lobbying around protections regarding human trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault, and poverty. She is the 2020 recipient of the Cincinnati 40 Under 40 for her work, where she actually represented the United States League of Women Voters at the United Nations 65th Commission on the Status of Women. She's currently studying law and public policy at Ohio State, and she's a research and policy fellow at the U.S. Office on Trafficking in Persons. Absolutely incredible woman, friend, and I'm thrilled to have her. But before I do that, I just wanted to say to Senator Fedor that I appreciate you. You and I've known you for a long time, and whether it's working on behalf of veterans and their families, working on clean water or clean energy, thinking about redistricting. You were at so many of the different redistricting events, from our own Fair Maps Day to field hearings to the hearings in the State House. And so I just wanted to make sure that I got a chance to say to you, Senator Fedor, that we appreciate you and all that you do to make Ohio a better place to live and work and vote. And with that, I turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Jen. And I also want to say thank you to Senator Fedor. I've worked with you on and off over the years on human trafficking initiatives, and the state of Ohio is so lucky to have an advocate like you working for survivors of human trafficking. So now I'm going to move on to introducing Senator Fedor to everybody here in attendance. Thank you so much. I see we have around 60 people here. Thank you so much for making time to join us for this month's Luncheon with the League. So we'd like to welcome Senator Teresa Fedor. She's a Democratic member of the Ohio Senate representing the 11th District, and that includes the Toledo area. So this is her second stint in the Ohio Senate, where she served from 2002 to 2010, following 8 years as the Ohio representative for the 45th and 47th House districts. Through her legislative career, she's championed responsive and responsible government. Her expertise and accomplished body of legislative work has focused primarily on education, healthcare, and human trafficking. She's considered the state's preeminent legislative voice in combating human trafficking. She's also a veteran of the U.S. Air Force and the Ohio National Guard. She spent 18 years in the classroom at Toledo Public Schools before pursuing elected office in 2000 in the 52nd District of the Ohio House of Representatives, and she received her bachelor's degree, which is Bachelor's of Science in Education from the University of Toledo. So thank you, Senator Fedor, for being here with us today, and welcome.
And thank you, and Jen and Sarah, you know, you were with me in the fight. It's been 16 years trying to get human trafficking response off the ground in the Ohio Revised Code, and it was a huge heavy lift, but we built a tremendous grassroots support system. And the League of Women Voters was my right hand, and it was wonderful to be able to count on everyone showing up, advocating, you know, do all the things that the legislators and the statewide office holders needed to know about and see from your perspective. So it's an honor actually to be here, and what we've just gone through with redistricting. I want to welcome everybody and thank everyone for lunching with the League. I really like that title. It's only because of people like yourself and your organization and your passions and all the extra work that you do to make the State House turn its head the way that it should, and those leaders to do what's coming from the grassroots up to reach them. And I know just how much outreach and organizing helps push a cause, and you all take the time away from your families and professions to stay informed and fight for the greater good. And we actually saw that with those 2 constitutional amendments in the last 10 years. I myself experienced gerrymandering 10 years ago. This is my 3rd redistricting process since I've been a legislator. So I've seen it all. I've heard it all. I've had to live the consequences and move from South Toledo after 20 plus years living there and go live on the road and rent. And so it was pretty traumatic. And of course, the legislators just went ahead and did what they wanted to do with no process in place, no good process for fair districts. Well, right now we are at a pivotal moment in our history. Our country is more divided than ever, and people are struggling to stay afloat with this pandemic. Ohio, by the way, has the worst unemployment system in the nation. And thousands of people still have not received their unemployment, and some of it's been a year. And I don't know how they're surviving. And the system is broken as it could be, but we're fighting. So if you know anyone that has unemployment issues, let us know. We're fixing it, but it's still going to take time. And I know that Ohio depends on an efficient, effective unemployment system to keep people working, to keep a roof over their head. And it seems to me that the leaders right now are not really taking that seriously. So I'm not surprised that we see dangerous bills currently moving through the legislature. Ohio's supermajority is currently pushing bills to gut voting rights, as you know, punish peaceful protesters, ban schools from teaching an honest history, and preventing schools from enforcing safety measures that are essential for preventing COVID-19 outbreaks and more. However, there is hope. We are currently redrawing the congressional district lines. And I tell most people that I run into who want to talk about issues that possibly I can help with, that our number 1 goal is to get fair district lines if we want our voices to be heard, if we want policies to change. Because for decades, the lines in Ohio have been gerrymandered or unfairly drawn to benefit one political party. And again, we rank one of the worst states in the nation for gerrymandered lines. And this harmful practice disregards Ohioans' political preferences, leaving voters with little to no choice, little to no power over who will represent them in government. And that is why we see so many harmful, divisive policies coming out of the state legislature. These extreme, harmful policies do not represent the people of Ohio. And we cannot say that enough. We must say it at every turn for every piece of draconian, harmful legislation. That must be our mantra. We need billboards, we need posters, we need, stickers on our cars. And of course, they are a direct result of rigged gerrymandered districts. For instance, right now, Republicans hold a supermajority controlling 75% of the Senate seats. 75% of the Senate seats, even though only about 55% of Ohioans vote for Republicans. And that means 45% of Ohio voters are being silenced, 45%. And what I explain to people is that when we have these balanced, fair districts, we can govern from the middle. We can govern on legislation where there's give and take and compromise, because right now there's barely any compromise in any piece of legislation that's harmful. It just rolls right through, it steamrolls right through, and the voters are harmed, and they are beginning to understand that they should pick their representatives, that they should have a voice on the legislation and the policies that go through the state of Ohio. And the billions of dollars in our budgets should be directed by voters, not politicians. And this practice has caused Toledo's Congressional District 9, more commonly known as one of your symbols that you use, the snake on the lake, to become one of the most gerrymandered in the state, and it stretches all the way from Toledo to Cleveland. And Toledo and Cleveland residents have very different needs and concerns, but their member of Congress, the amazing Marcy Kaptur, is forced to split her attention across the gigantic district. And in a fair map, Toledo, Akron, and Dayton, Ohio's 4th, 5th, and 6th largest cities, should all anchor their own congressional districts. Right now, none of these large cities have their own districts. They're all cracked apart to weaken the power of voters in those communities. And redistricting impacts every aspect of our lives, which has become increasingly evident over the last few years. This should not be a partisan issue. Redistricting and gerrymandering impacts every single citizens, all citizens, and we all deserve the power to vote politicians out of office when and if necessary, and all deserve the power to elect new, diverse, representative districts, people who are going to truly represent us. Actually come to our doors more often. I think do surveys, have town halls. When the community arranges their own town hall, representatives show up. They're not absent. We also need to have our public schools fully funded. We need a modern public education system, and that's what drove me out of the classroom. I saw Little House on the Prairie. I needed to spend a lot of my own money to get my own supplies and my own professional development. So, our country is as weak as our public schools, or our country is as strong as our public schools. And our children deserve the type of future where they can imagine themselves and dreaming about things that they would like to do and follow through with that, and not be anchored down with college debt, living in neighborhoods of poverty, broken public schools. So there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done around our public institutions, and my passion belongs to the children. We also
thank you so much for the
Yes.
passion that you've shown for our fair maps, for our survivors of human trafficking, for our school children, and for unemployment in Ohio. And that's why the League of Women Voters is going to continue the fight for nonpartisan maps and for Ohio voters to have a voice in their government. And we appreciate the passion and the suggestions that you've made for ways that voters can be better engaged in their democracy in their state house. Before we drill down, I do want to let our individuals know that are in attendance that you can ask questions for Senator Fedor in our Q&A function here in the chat, and they are being funneled to me by Michael. And we've already had a question come up asking you to talk a little bit more about the Ohio unemployment system that you mentioned before. I know that you said that we had one of the worst unemployment systems in the country. If you can elaborate on that a little bit more and what we can do to fix that.
Sure. The auditor, there was a bill that was passed, and I just lost my viewing of the Zoom. I don't know what happened, but I can listen. We have the auditor report that just came out on Friday, reviewing the operations of the unemployment system. It was already antiquated and not staffed well before the pandemic. And then overnight, we went from, 0 to 1,000 people who needed to apply for unemployment. And then we also, which we weren't able to follow through with all of those inquiries. And the idea was that we should just go ahead and approve a lot of them without the necessary prior policies of verification. And then also there would be a verification as they went along, but they moved them along quite quickly. Then also the federal government approved what they call gig workers, people who normally don't, invest their working paychecks in the unemployment system. They then qualified. So they had to hire, the state of Ohio hired companies to be able to take up the load, phone calls, but still it took hours and hours, weeks and weeks to get a phone call answered. Our system wasn't able to process the claims quickly enough, and the workers that were well trained and qualified, there weren't enough of them. So this really bogged down our system. We also had unfortunate situations where a Deloitte company that had the contract was hacked. So many of the citizens who applied for unemployment, some we believe even include the regular unemployment because they were mixed in with the PUA, the federal gig worker unemployment, had their data stolen. So that complicated measures down the road, where now I had to fight for people to get their money when a third party came in to their unemployment account through unemployment, changed their bank account and rerouted it to another bank account, and it was stolen from ODJFS. We're talking like $8,000, $10,000, where people waited weeks to be able to get it, and then it was stolen. And the position from the Ohio unemployment system and the leaders, including Governor DeWine, said that, well, it was no fault of our own. It was you, the user, that either did a phishing link or had an insecure Wi-Fi link, and someone came in and stole it from you from your end. Well, I didn't buy that. I worked with Senator Sherrod Brown and the Department of Labor, and they approved ODJFS to pay our citizens, and that the FBI and the law enforcement can go after and trace who the culprits are. But it's been a real struggle, and we will continue to monitor our unemployment system as it's getting fixed. There is a council that's made up of House members, Senate members, and other folks outside of the legislature who are overseeing the progress that's being done with Ohio Jobs and Family Services unemployment, and how we are transitioning, because it needed to be modernized. We had contracts with people to do that starting in 2022. And we're still in this old system trying to merge into a new system, which makes it even more complicated. So hang in there. A lot of the legislators' staff and legislators are trying to personally make sure their constituents get the money that they earned, that they qualify for. In the meantime, you know, they're trying to keep their lives together. Some of them have lost their homes, their cars. They can't find a job, you know, they can't get the internet that they need. So it's very, very complicated. And, you know, I want to make sure that this stays on the radar of everybody, because a lot of elected officials just act sometimes like the problem's over. Like some people are still acting like COVID is over, and it is not. So, you know, we have to keep this out front and center and help our communities neighborhood by neighborhood. So it's going to be a long, drawn out process, but I'm committed until it works efficiently and effectively.
Information. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm seeing your questions coming in now on the chat. Senator Fedor, we have so many questions for you. You are such an engaging speaker. I see one here. You're known for being very passionate about education, and you're also a member of the Senate Primary and Secondary Education Committee. What are your thoughts on the two bills prohibiting divisive concepts in education, and their review in the House State and Local Government Committee instead of the House Primary and Secondary Education Committee?
Well, I believe this is a political gimmick that Republicans need to deflect off of January 6th. Because when you look at how that issue got off the ground, it was kind of launched after January 6th and was a deflection. And I think a reason and issue that they could round up their constituent base to fight for something. And as far as I'm concerned, that is a racist issue, and I will not hesitate to say that to any of the sponsors that come before me on the Senate Education Committee or whatever committee that it's on. I'm hoping that I will be on that committee because I will just call it out. You know, there's no reason why you can't, why our children can't deal with the truth. They want to know the truth. They're expecting us to teach them how life works, or where did we come from? What was it like before? They're eager to learn. They're wired to learn and to love. So I think that these are adults that are acting irresponsible. This is a political issue and it's racist in nature.
Our next question is about Toledo's drinking water and its vulnerability to Lake Erie algae blooms. Do you feel like enough is being done to reduce the vulnerability to drinking water algae growth in Lake Erie?
That's a very good question. You know, I was here in 2014 when we were given an advisory not to drink or take a shower, use the water at all. And everyone's panicking, trying to get enough water for their family members. And it was a struggle and a shock. And we went through almost 4 days of living this way. So it was real, and it is real as far as that issue ever happening again. What I do know, and I'm ranking on the Agriculture Natural Resource Committee in the Senate, and I've always served on environment committees when I can. It's a passion of mine. All of the money that is being spent for H2 Ohio to clean up the phosphorus so it doesn't go into the lake, that's well and good. And I think some of the best practices for farming and voluntary practices are slow getting off the ground. So I think we need to push for more mandatory practices for farming. Although at the same time, something is very, very counterproductive, and that is the governor allowing more animal farms, large animal farms called CAFOs, to permit even more cows, chickens, and pigs, allow more CAFOs to come into the Maumee watershed that are new. So while we're trying to clean up and prevent this, at the same time, we're adding more poo to the watershed, and it's coming right through Toledo. The Maumee River goes right in. It's the largest tributary in all of the 5 Great Lakes. So we feel as though the cost of cleaning this up is on our backs, and that counterproductive practices are allowed to happen while they're saying they're spending, I think something like $400 million was approved this last budget for the next 2 years for more projects to prevent the phosphorus from coming into the lake. So I don't think enough is being done. I don't think it's taken seriously. One other thought that I've been contemplating and learning from the other states that are looking at this, and more states are collaborating together. In some states, and even in China, get this, they require the corporations to process the poo as part of their business plan, not leave it to the public to clean it up. It should be part of their business plan. The nuclear waste, you know, is handled by the nuclear industry. Why isn't the poo handled by the farming industry? Put it in as part of your business plan and the costs. So there are solutions. There's technology to process it right there on site and for it to be reused. So if China's requiring it and it's working for them, the United States. And by the way, Smithfield is owned by China. Smithfield you see into Kroger's grocery store for bacon and so forth. And a lot of their pigs are processed here in the United States, where we have to clean up the waste, and then it's sent to China to feed their people. So there's a whole lot there to really look at and understand and demand public responsibility for what they're doing to our environment.
Sounds like there's a lot of work to be done here in Ohio.
I
want to
am
switch.
also supporting putting in a bill for moratorium, no more CAFOs until we get a handle on this.
That is great to know. I want to switch gears since we're at the halfway mark. We have had a question, and of course, I personally am always curious to hear about human trafficking efforts in Ohio. Do you know if there's any new legislation you're planning on proposing around anti-human trafficking efforts? Is there anything else that you feel like we can be doing here in the state of Ohio to combat human trafficking and support the survivors here in Ohio?
Yes, I do have a bill. It is expanding the expungement language in the state of Ohio. We've done that twice. In 2012, when I passed the Safe Harbor Act, we were able to put in legislation to allow the victims to expunge their records. That was so successful, and more people really were beginning to realize we need more. So there was another bill passed, and now we're expanding it even further, and we're hoping to get this done in the next General Assembly. So I will send information. We're hoping to have testimony in the Senate Judiciary Committee. I understand that this is a priority for statewide offices, the governor. So this is something I believe we're going to get done by the end of the year. Other legislation, I am introducing something for K-12 education on human trafficking. Our children need to be aware and be cognizant of the kinds of things that are harmful. And Florida is doing a great job. We're going to kind of take their lead in how they're rolling this out. There's also another bill on a pre-grooming language that law enforcement wants to see. And so the commission that I put into place, that was the first real legal law that was put into place, was a commission to allow us to understand the scope of the problem, make recommendations, and pass legislation. I head up the legal and legislative subcommittee for the Attorney General's Human Trafficking Commission. And so that's how we do the work. We work collaboratively together with the experts. So the practitioners get to come forward and make the recommendation, and that's what law enforcement has been doing. So I'm proud to work with them, and they need more tools. We need more investigators. You know, we need so much on the prevention and protection end of this heinous crime. Also labor trafficking. We're seeing more cases in Ohio for labor trafficking. And every year I have a Human Trafficking Awareness Day. It's in February. I had an event this last February for a week, a Zoom, and we had over 800 people from around the world sign up, even England, Spain, all the experts in the United States. I was able to tap in their expertise, and the event was put together by survivors. You know, they're the leaders. They inform us on how to prevent this, attack it, and protect. So this year I'm looking for even more expertise. So, we'll send you information. You can sign up.
I personally can vouch for Senator Fedor's Human Trafficking Awareness Day. I have attended it for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's been incredible. So I encourage anyone attending this Zoom, if you're interested in human trafficking, this is a wonderful event to attend and learn more from. Senator Fedor, I want to switch gears one more time. We've had a bunch of questions come in on the gerrymandering and our fair maps. So I'm just going to dig in. This is a question from Iris. Congressional lines being drawn by the General Assembly. Do you feel like these efforts should be drawn in the light of day instead of behind closed doors during legislative process in the General Assembly?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the Democrats are going to be coming out with a congressional map, the Senate Democrats, along with the collaboration of the House. So that should be happening this week, soon. And we are encouraging the Republicans to come out with theirs as well. So that's a strategy we thought was really important. We did that with the Senate and House redistricting map. So it could be a starter conversation. And, you know, I support, if this process doesn't work, the same thing that Michigan did. You know, they had a commission that did it. It was non-political. It may be that that's what we have to do here in Ohio, but, you know, we'll see. You certainly commanded the performance of the committee rooms, the phone calls, the emails, the letters, the events in their Senate and House districts. So we should continue to do that for the rest of the remaining redistricting effort that we have to put together. But the congressional maps, you know, it should be 7 to 9, right? That's fair. You know, there should be 15 Democratic senators sitting on the floor tomorrow in session. And that's what's fair. So we just have to continue doing what you're doing. You're doing a terrific job, and get more members, get more people to join. They're seeing the effectiveness of the League of Women Voters.
And I think you kind of read my mind a little bit on the next question, which is what I'm seeing over and over again in the chat here is, you know, what else can we do? What's working? What can we be even better at? You know, what else can we bring to the table, you know, when we're working on this?
I think the issues like the fair school funding, we would have had fair school funding if you had 15 Democratic senators in the Senate when it came to the budget. Okay. The fair districts, some of the draconian work requirements that governor's going to put in, you know, just a lot of these extreme bills would not get any more than a couple hearings at the most if we had the type of representation that Ohio voters, you know, at the end of the day, after 10 years of voting statewide, tell us who they are. We are not Republican. We are not Democrat. There are no super majorities. We feel that competition and involvement, engagement from citizens is the best way to govern, and for our government to work for us. I work for you. I listen to you. I have to pay attention to so many voices and try to figure out what in the balance is really good for the majority of the people, you know, the common good. If we can get back to that, we can have strong public institutions that monies can be followed and be put on the table, unlike the charter school. The charter schools do not have to show you all the pennies on the table like a traditional public school. And that means there's an open door for corruption. And so a lot of the legislation that needs to come forward for government to be responsive and responsible to the people must be directly correlated to fair districts, and then all the policies that we would like to see.
And then I wanted to ask you, because of your vast experience as a legislator, do you see a way to better connect rural voters and urban voters to being engaged in their democracy, and especially being better represented at the State House and connecting the interests between rural voters and urban voters?
I think they're children, you know, our kids, our kiddos. You know, I really love the idea that you're having youth memberships. You know, our children, I think, need a lot more guidance from many different areas, but county fairs, Democrats should be permeating all the county fairs. Getting our kids involved in civic, you know, responsibility. You know, we used to have exchanges of high school, you know, student exchanges. That doesn't happen anymore. I think more where we engage our young people in asking them what they think, what is important to them. You know, so I really think that type of engagement will pay off really well, and the children will be more thoughtful, critical thinkers on some of these issues because they're watching. They are definitely watching. So the rural areas are harder because, you have large farms. We're an agricultural state. That is a challenge. But getting involved with the communities, the League of Women Voters and nonpartisan. So making sure that, your membership is strong and having roundtable discussions in people's homes, inviting them to have conversations.
And speaking of the children, I know that we recently passed some legislation on how we fund Ohio public schools. Would you like to comment on that or share anything about your thoughts on that legislation?
Yes. Well, at the end of the day in the budget, I didn't vote for the budget. I was the only one that didn't vote for the budget because they wouldn't commit in the Ohio Revised Code to put the fair school funding formula in code. That means in 2 years, they can scrap it and go back to residual budgeting and rely too much on property tax owners to pay for our local public schools when it should be the state. Legislators need to abide by the state constitution. And the fair school funding formula was put together 3 years by my good friend John Patterson, who I sat next to on the floor. And he says, what do you think about me, tackling this? I said, go for it. Nobody else is going to do it. You're the expertise. You can pull everybody together and you care and you have time to do it. So he went into the weeds like I did with human trafficking. I went to the social workers. I went to law enforcement. I went to all the practitioners of people trying to solve human trafficking. He did the same thing with schools. He went to the treasurers, the school board, the principals, the teachers, and they figured out a formula that was going to work where you could do a plug and play. And the superintendents, if there's a small kindergarten class 1 year in a large, junior high, he can, adjust and adapt the budget. That's not possible right now. And they were able to really have everyone, every single school district all together on the same page, which has never happened, by the way, to agree that this formula is going to work for everyone. And we're going to be able to address the issues of poverty and disparities. And it was flatly rejected by Republicans, flatly rejected. And what happened at the end of the day, Matt Huffman wants a voucher for every single child in Ohio, which would crush our public schools, crush our pensions, by the way. Voucher teachers don't pay into pensions. So if you're a retired teacher right now, you should be worried. But they expanded vouchers even further in this budget, only giving us 2 years of this uncommitted 2-year budget for fair school funding. So it wasn't a win. You're going to hear people say it was a win. No, it's not, because I know my colleagues. They're like Lucy in the football. Lucy talks Charlie Brown into believing she's going to keep her finger on that football so he can kick it. And I've seen Republicans over and over and over with redistricting, public schools, go on down the line, private prisons. She lifts the ball just as he's going to kick it. And so, fair districts are going to get us the kind of government Ohioans need.
I appreciate the way that you keep tying this back to fair districts.
It is
as long as voters are able to be well represented in their government, it's important that their voices are heard.
Well, everyone that comes through my door and comes across me, I tell them right now, your fight and your only win is fair districts, because all of this stuff will be spinning our wheels on the hamster wheel and Republicans laughing behind our back because they did the Lucy thing again.
We have about 5 minutes left, and I want to just take those 5 minutes because we've had a couple of questions speaking of the budget, speaking of things in that nature, talking about dark money in politics. I know that we've had a few corruption scandals at the Ohio State House over the past couple of years. Do you see any kind of work happening in the future to try to reduce dark money in politics, or to try to work towards making the influence of money in politics less, especially in the Ohio State House?
I did introduce a bill and had one hearing, my only sponsor hearing on, getting rid of dark money in politics, especially since a lot of the dark money coming in, it's tied to foreign countries. Uber is tied to Saudi Arabia, and if, these corporations give money, and if they're tied into foreign countries, then they're playing into our United States elections. We need to get rid of that. We need to have transparent contributions, and we need to know who is contributing. So I will reintroduce that bill again. I'm working with Catherine Terser and some of the people that she has that are experts, taking a look at the language that I will be introducing, but I will be introducing that bill again. And we need to push for hearings.
Wonderful. Thank you again for spending time with us today.
Welcome.
I'm going to ask Cynthia to pull up our closing slides, just to reiterate some of the information that we shared earlier today. This is Senator Fedor's website, where you can get in touch with her. You can follow her and the work that she's doing. You can stay abreast of the bills that she's working on. Next slide, please. Again, our Fair Districts all volunteer huddle. If anything you heard today has inspired you to jump in on the fight for fair districts, the next meeting is October 13th at 6 p.m. over Zoom. Highly recommend that you attend. This is where we get together and we talk about our strategic action plan going forward, and we find our different ways that we can all plug in. Next slide, please. Again, Fair Districts we are the fiscal agent for Fair Districts, so any donations that you make to Fair Districts 100% goes towards the fight for fair maps and making sure that we have that nonpartisan advocacy, so that individuals voting in Ohio have that voice in their government and we have proportional representation across the state. Next slide, please. And again, young leaders, please, 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 if you know anyone who would be a good fit for this, if you know any young leaders, emerging young leaders, or individuals that might need the training and the experience to grow into youth and leadership, please point them our way. Ages 13 to 25, we welcome them with open arms. We would love to grow some more young leaders in our communities. Next slide, please. And of course, feel free to re-up your membership if you know anyone that would be a good fit for the League. I just want to take a moment here to say the League of Women Voters is not just for women. It is for all genders. It is for all identities. It is for all people. This is a space that welcomes everyone. This is not an organization that excludes anyone from membership, and we absolutely welcome you into the League of Women Voters. Thank you everyone for taking time to be here, and thank you, Senator Fedor, for taking time to spend with us, and for your amazing insight and for your support of so many important issues here in the state of Ohio. And again, we have Senator Fedor's information is in the chat if you'd like to reach out to her and let her know if you support some of the things that she's working on, if you'd like to connect with her. And we'll look forward to receiving some extra information from her office on some of the things that she mentioned earlier. Senator Fedor, do you have any closing words for us since we have a few minutes?
I just want to thank everyone for being involved, and keep at it. Talk to your neighbors at the grocery store. Try to get more people to join the League of Women Voters, and we have our next, battle with the congressional maps, and that you should be starting to see them this week. So let's keep going. Thank you.